So this database management is a software. It has a capability or it has a ability to maintain and manipulate the database. All the data and information which is resides in the database will going to be accessed by multiple user. Hiding of unnecessary data or hiding of a background details from the user will be termed as what? Data abstraction. If I am doing some modification to one data, that should not reflect or that should not harm the content of another data. Hello everybody, a warm welcome to one and all. I am Rohini TS from the Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, the Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. I welcome you all back to the second session on chapter 13, that is database concept. So in our previous session, we have discussed regarding what do you mean by database, that is related to what introduction part of the database, and also we have discussed regarding the applications of database. That means in various fields we are going to use the database in the terms of finance, accounting, and for water meter billing, for colleges and sales, and also related to manufacturing. So those are some of the fields which I have discussed regarding the applications of database, and also we have discussed regarding the origin of data. So it includes data as well as the information. So how we are going to get the data and information, and also we have discussed regarding the evolution of database. There we have discussed regarding the difference between the manual data processing as well as the electronic or computerized electronic data processing, and also we have discussed regarding the data processing cycle. So we have to collect the data first, then we have to take the input for the data, then processing has to be done, storage has to be takes place, then we are going to do the output. Along with that, it has to be shared. So that will be considered as what? Communication. And also we have learned some of the terms which is related to database. So that includes file. So what do you mean by database? And also we have discussed regarding what is table, what is tuple, what is record, and also what is domain, what is field. So what is an entity? So those are the terminologies that I have discussed in the last session. So in our today's session, we will be getting into the data types of DBMS, and also we will be learning about the DBMS, that is database management system, and also features of database, then data abstraction, and who are all the DBMS users, and we'll see about the data independence. Let me get into the today's session that is related to data types. So here, as we all know that why we are going to use the data types. So let me consider, here I have a table. Consider this as an employee table, and it will going to include employee ID and employee name will be there. Along with that, he is going to have some age, right? So let me consider 1 AB, and here 28, and 2 GE, and let me consider 26, right? So when I am working with this database, I have to understand what kind of value I am supposed to give. For example, for age, if I am giving 25,000, is this validated one? Can I give 25,000 as an age value? Obviously not. That means we have to understand what kind of data this will going to hold. That is related to what? Database. Then what kind of the various database that I can have in the DBMS, that is what we are going to learn with this data types, and mention any 4 data types or explain any 4, 3 or 5 data types will going to be asked in your examination. So you have to mark it as a important topic. So here, what is this first data type? That is related to integer. So it has a capability to hold whole numbers without fractional point or without fractional values. So it will going to store only whole numbers. So without any fractions, it will going to hold or store whole numbers. Then we have a single and double precision. So when you wanted to represent a speed of a light, speed of a any of the things, at that time it will going to be grows exponentially. So at that time the small storage space is not so enough in order to store that kind of data. So we have to use single and double precision. It will going to hold up to 7 numbers. And also logical data type, it will be going to hold either true or false. It will going to have only 2 values, either true or false. If it is true, it will be 1, and if it is false, then it will be 0. And also we have a characters. So characters are can be anything. It can be any data like numbers, single character, alphabets, any special character. So it will going to hold that kind of data. It has to be within a single code. For example, A, B, or 9, 7, a star. So these kind of data will be termed as character. What is this strings? It is a collection of character or a stream of character that will be considered as what? String. So strings are stream of character. For example, if I wanted to take all these together, how I am going to do that? AB97. So this will be considered as what? Strings. So it will going to have a stream of character or a collection of character. And next we have a memo data type. You just consider I wanted to store up to 250 character. For example, consider the experience of an employee in any organization. At the time, if I am giving only 10 character, is it enough to express his feelings towards the organization? Somehow it is difficult. So at the time we are going to use this memo data type in order to store the address, in order to take the experience. So at the time it requires more character or a more space. Then we have to use this memo data type, and it has the ability to store up to 255 characters. Next we have a index field. It is somehow like a reference. So this index fields will going to store the information along with a document. For example, here I have an index. So in the index, if I am going to take it as introduction 1, so if I click on this will going to help me in order to read one file. So here also it will going to hold the information along with the document. For that purpose, we are going to use this index field, and we have a currency field. So if I wanted to showcase, or if I wanted to have any different countries currency, at that time we are going to have this currency. So if you consider India, there we are going to use rupees, and if you consider any other foreign countries like America and all, there we are going to use the dollars. So at that time we have to take this currency field, and by default it will be dollars in nature. And we have a date fields. So when you wanted to display date in different formats, at that time we are going to use this date and time. So for example, this will going to include date, DD, and for month you have to take 3 characters of a month. For example, if you wanted to take February, at that time how I am supposed to do? FEB. If I wanted to take December, DEC. So in this way you have to take, and it will going to take up to 4 characters for year. Okay, and this is related to date field. So mainly in order to store the date, that can be any of the formats. So you can use DD, YY. So that will be differs from user's perspective. And also we have a text fields. So this will going to it will be a combination of alphabets along with the numbers, that is alphanumeric. So it will going to hold both alphabets as well as the numerics. So these are the data types that we have in a database, and it is also important topic in terms of your examination perspective. So we'll see about the database management system. So till now we have studied regarding database. So now I am talking about the database management system. I have a database in order to store the student details. I have a database in order to store the details of an employee. So then who is going to maintain all these databases? So for that purpose, we have a database management system. So this database management is a software. It has a capability, or it has a ability to maintain and manipulate the database. So that is what the definition of this DBMS. So understand, your students, database is different and database management is different. Okay, so as we know, class is different, college is different. College is holding many classes, and college is taking care of each classes, and each class has its own characteristics. So I can consider class as a database and college is a database management system. So in that way you have to understand. So database management system, in short we will be calling it as a DBMS. It is a software that allows creation, definition and manipulation of database. I can create a database, I can define the database, I can manipulate that database. So that software will be termed as, if that software allowing me to do all those things with a database, then we are going to call that as a database management system. So DBMS is a tool used to perform any kind of operations on a data in a database. So we are going to use this DBMS software in order to do any kind of operations like I can add the content to the database, I can relieve the content from the database, I can do some computations, I can do some manipulations, some changes can be made, modifications can be made. So that is what we can do any of the operations with the database. So for that, this database management system is providing a privilege. And also this DBMS also provides protections and security to database. So if the college is not giving the security for a particular class, then how the things will goes wrong, right? So there also DBMS will going to provide security for all the databases which is included in a particular database management system, so that it will provide protection as well as the security. So this is these are the points that you have to remember when it comes to the database management system. So now we'll see some of the features of database. We'll see the features, and this is also important. So don't think that what all the topic is considered as important. Yes, so all the topics are important. So here we have lot of expectation from this chapter. That means you can expect even single point as a question. So that's what the reason you have to concentrate here. So now we'll see about the features of database. So as we all know that I have a database, and that will going to be managed by a database management system. It has a centralized database. That means that data, whatever the data is included in a database, will going to be available to multiple users. So as I told, college is a database management system, and we have a separate classes, and each classes can be accessible, right? And that privilege is given by the college. So here also we have a centralized data accessing, and all the data and information which is resides in a database will going to be accessed by multiple users. For that reason, it will going to have some of the features. What is the first feature? That is redundancy can be minimized or controlled. So if I say, consider I have a college. So I have a classroom 1, classroom 2, classroom 3 and classroom 4. So C3, C4, C2 and C1. Can I consider this C2 as a C1 again? Obviously not. So can I consider this C4 as a C1 again? No. So that means what? There should not be a repeatable things. So there should not be a duplicacy. So then that will going to create some ambiguity. So if I am going to write C1 and C1, so where should students go, either for C1 or this C1? So that means it will going to create some confusion, some ambiguity will going to be generated. So in order to remove that, or in order to relieve that confusions and all, it will not going to allow any redundant data. That means repetitive data, duplication of data should not take place. So in the database also, by making use of this database, so this database or a collection of data, whatever we are going to have in a database, will going to generate some error if we are storing the same data again and again. For example, I have a student details. Once I have written their student ID. So if I am writing the same ID again, I will get a notification. That means that data is already exists. So if you consider any file, if you wanted to store the same file in the same location with the same name, you are going to get a notification, right? Already file is existed. You wanted to replace it, yes or cancel, right? So that means what? It is avoiding the duplicacy, it is avoiding the redundancy. That feature can also be expected with this help of DBMS or a database. You can see here, the redundancy can be minimized or controlled. So in the DBMS environment, if redundancy is present, then it can be controlled by propagating updates in all the places wherever redundant data is present. So it will going to take care about the data which is more repetitive, which is duplicate data, or which is creating some ambiguity. So it will going to reduce us or minimizes the confusions, or it will going to be controlled of this redundancy. Next is what? Data integrity. Integrity is related to correctness of the data. So you all just imagine one example. I am giving one first PUC admission applications. At that time, I am going to have one field called age. So if the student is writing that age as a 6 years, then is that acceptable Do we think that 6-year-old either girl or boy can join to the first PUC? No, right? That means we have to think about the correctness of a data. So here also it will going to have some minimum and maximum ranges. For example, if you wanted to apply for any of the competitive exams, at that time there will be age limit. If I am giving my date of birth, if it is exceeding the range of that particular application, at that time it should not allow me to take the application. So that means we have to check for the correctness or a truthness of a data. Then that is also going to be takes place with the help of this database management system. So data integrity, that refers to the correctness of the data in the database. So in other words, the data available in the database is reliable data. I can trust it. First PU student is applying for the first PU application. So if he is writing 15 years or 16 years, then that is relevant data, that is reliable data, I can trust that. So that kind of things will going to be takes place as a one feature. So next we have a data sharing. So as I told, it is a centralized database. So this data can be accessible by multiple users. So for that purpose, in the DBMS, data is stored in the centralized database. So it is permitted the user can be accessible to the same piece of information which is required at the same time. So I can access it, you can access it, even your parents can access the same data at the same time. It will not say, I'm giving this data to that ma'am, I'm giving this data to another person, I won't give. It won't say anything. That means we can have the data and information which is available for everybody on all the time. That is related to data sharing. We'll see the next one, that is database security. So we are doing all these much of things. If there is no security, who is going to opt it? Nobody, right? So we have to give some security and we have to give some protection for the data and information which is resides in the database, so that when we are having this database, this will going to provide a security for the data and information which is resides over there, and it will not going to allow any unauthorized user. So the person one who is not authorized, those who have not have any privilege, they can't access it. Only if they are authorized, only if they belongs to that category, in order to able to access those data, then only they can do that. By that, it will going to provide the security for a database. So it will provide a variety of security mechanism for the user to protect his or her data stored in the database. There will be encryption method, there will be some two-way login checking, everything will be there. With the help of all those features, we can give a security for the data and information which is resides in the database. And also ease of application development. How it is easy in order to develop any applications with the help of this database. So here programmers needs to develop the application programs according to the user needs. So we have to develop, as I told, it will going to have all the real-time aspects. For example, if I wanted to store any of the details which is related to the employee, at that time I won't bother about a student, I won't bother about any of the other faculty, or I am not going to bother about any of other department. So my main intention is what? I just wanted to have a database which is related to store the data and information about an employee. So at that time, this application will going to be easy, because we are thinking in the perspective of to satisfy the requirement of a user. As per the requirement of a user, we are developing a application. So we are developing a database. So that is why it will be considered as ease of application development. And also we have a multiple user interface. For example, if you consider any of the scholarship applying website or any of the web pages, at that time everybody will going to get the same web page. That means being a student or being an applicant, I'm going to get the same web pages for every applicant. But what it comes in the terms of administrator, how the database will going to be look like to them. Okay, you just imagine we have a college, or else you best take the example of classroom. Okay, Google Classroom you all consider. So being a member of that particular classroom, how your interface will be. So being an admin of that classroom, how my interface will be. So if he is a faculty, or if are they a student, so their requirements and their features will going to be differ from person to person based on their role what they are playing, right? So in the same way, multiple user interface in the sense all the user will not going to have a same kind of mindset, and all the user is not so able to fetch all the kinds of data which is available over internet. So in the database, it will going to provide different types of interfaces such as query language, application program interface, menu driven interface, etc. So it will going to be vary from person to person based on their rules. So if we consider a college as a database, the role of a principal will be different, the role of a faculty will be different, the role of a student will be different, but everybody belongs to same college, but their perspective, their role, their interfaces, everything is different. Principal will going to see the faculty in one perspective. So same faculty will going to be seen by the students in another's perspective. That means what? It has a different user interface. In the same way, in the database also I have a different users, I have a different interfaces for each role based on the role they are performing. So that's why it will be considered as what? Multiple user interface. So these are the features that you have to consider when you are writing a features of database. So now we'll see about the next topic, that is related to data abstraction. So already we got to know what you mean by data abstraction. We know what about data and abstraction. Already we have studied in the chapter 6 called object oriented programming concept. What is data abstraction? Hiding of unnecessary data or hiding of a background details from the user will be termed as what? Data abstraction. It is only giving the data and information which is required to the user by hiding all the background details. That will be considered as what? Data abstraction. If you consider the refrigerator and washing machine, at the time we know how to operate it, but are we going to bother about how it is working internally? No, right? So the manufacturer has made all those things as a abstracted things or abstracted modules. So why? Because we just, as a user, I just wanted to use that without thinking about how it is working internally. That will be termed as what? Data abstraction. It is giving the data and information which is necessary for the user in order to do the operation by hiding all the background details. So that will be considered as what? Data abstraction. So you can see here, the major purpose of a database system is to provide a user with abstract view of the data. That is, the system hides the certain details of how the data are stored and maintained. For example, you consider you are going to search something in the any of the browser. For example, you are searching about some of the colleges in the Google Chrome. At that time, will it going to show you from where did it fetch the data, how long it took, and from which server or from which country it has brought all the data in order to satisfy the requirement of a customer. Have you ever think about that? No, right? That means we are getting the data and information which is required for me by hiding all the background things what and all has been happened. So here also in the data abstraction, in order to give a customer a very best abstract view of the data without including any of the garbage or without including how the things has happened inside or how the operations has been take place, everything will going to be like it will not going to be reached to the user, only they will get the data and information in the perspective of their fetching of data. They are just getting the abstract view. So in this abstract view, they will get to know how to use or how to get the benefit out of it instead of thinking it how these things has been happened. That is related to data abstractions. So there are 3 levels of data abstraction. Remember, there are 3 levels of data abstractions. What is the first level? That is physical level or also called as internal level, and we have a conceptual level also considered as logical level, and we have a view level, that is external level. So by these 3 levels we will be calling this data abstraction is also considered as what? 3 level architecture of RDBMS, or you can also consider 3 level RDBMS architecture. Okay, because it has a 3 levels: physical level, conceptual level, and also it has a view level. So here you can see the diagram and make it as a note. It is also important for 5-mark question. explain the data abstraction. So you have to be very conscious regarding each point, because there may be a chances of asking the question like which level has more abstractions, or which level has the least abstraction, which is the intermediate level, so which is the, what is the another name for physical level. So these kind of questions can be asked for 1 mark. So you have to be very conscious. So you can see that here we have a physical database, and that will be considered as a physical level. Okay, so in this we are going to have some of the data and file, which is the lowest level of abstraction. So we can see the data and information what is there, and we can fetch the data, we can do some computation, processing can be done, everything can be done in the physical database. So first level is what? Internal schema, and it is also called as internal level. So if I wanted to access any of these files, or if I wanted to access any of these records, with the help of this internal schema, I can access these data and elements which is resides in the database. Also, it is a collection of files. And when it comes to the next level, there we have a conceptual schema. So in the conceptual schema, this has a tool in order to fetch the data and information which is resides in the internal schema. So in the internal schema, I have accessibility to the physical database. When it comes to the conceptual schema, it is also considered as a conceptual level, and is also considered as a logical level. So in that, this logical level has some logic, it has some tools in order to access the content of this internal schema. But how much of data is shown in the internal schema will going to be hidden when it comes to the levels of conceptual schema. So when it is reaching from one level to another level to another level, at that time abstractions will going to be high. So the data which is going to be shown to the user will be less. So they are showing how to use it instead of how the things has been happened in the background. So that you have to remember. So here when it comes to the conceptual schema, so this will going to have a tool in order to access the content of internal schema. So when it comes to the external schema, it is the level which will going to be shown to the user. So it will going to have multiple user, because as we all know that this database will going to have a centralized database. So data will going to be shared with a multiple number of user. So for that purpose, we have a multiple number of users here, and also this is the highest level of abstraction. We are not going to get much data in the external schema. Remember, it is most frequently asked question, which is the highest level of abstraction, that is external schema. This is also called as external level. Then which level has lowest level of schema? That is internal schema or internal level. Okay, this is regarding what? 3-level DBMS architecture. We'll see the first point, that is related to physical level. So here you can see the physical level. So in the physical level, what we have a collection of files. We have a collection of records, I can say. It is the lowest level of abstraction. Which is the lowest level? That is physical level. So that describes how the data are actually stored. So here if you consider how the data are stored with the help of files. I have a files, and collection of files will going to be stored in the directory, and collection of the directory will going to give me the folder, right? So in this first physical level, it has the lowest level of abstraction. That means data which will going to be shown to the user will be more. So abstraction level is low, then the data content which is visible is high. So if the abstraction level is high, the content will going to be shown is very low. The physical level describes the complex low-level data structures in detail. So in the physical level, we will get to know how the data has been stored. That describes the complex low-level data, which is data structure in detail. So then that kind of abstraction will be low in the physical level, and also it contains the definition of stored record and method of representing the data fields and access aid used. That means if I have a database, so in the physical level I can get to know what is the name of this database, how many fields it has, how many rows it has, how many columns it has, what is its name, what kind of data it is storing, what is the scheme, like how many rows we have, how many columns, what is the name of a database, what is the name of that particular file. Everything I can get to know in the physical level. That is what we are saying here. It will going to store the record and method of representing the data data fields. For example, here I have an employee ID, employee name. So it is representing a field. Along with that, it is able to access the field which has been used. So the content of that fields can be accessed in the physical level. What will going to happen in a conceptual level? So when it reaches to second level, that is logical level. So when the data comes to the conceptual level, in this field, how it will going to take place? It is the next higher level of abstraction. It is the intermediary level between the physical as well as the external. So it will be considered as what? Conceptual level. So it will going to describe what data are stored in the database and what relationship exists among those data. So why I am saying this? If you consider this conceptual scheme, as I told, this has a accessibility to the internal schema. So in the internal schema, we have a physically stored information, physically stored databases. With the help of this conceptual schema, I can get to know what is there in the internal schema. In the internal schema, we have a list of database and along with its field data. So that can be get to know to this conceptual schema, so that it will going to shows that what kind of data are we storing in the database and what is the relationship which exists among all those data. And also it also contains the method of deriving the object in the conceptual view from the objects in the internal view. So this is what intermediary level, so that by making use of this conceptual schema, I have an ability to access the content of this. That means I can retrieve or I can generate some object to this level by having some information which is resides in the internal level. So contains the method of deriving the object. I have some method. So with the help of that method, I can access the objects of a previous level, that is internal level. So in the conceptual view from the objects in the internal view. So then what we have at last, that is external view. It is the most or highest level of abstraction. Very important question. If you have seen the model question paper, this is most frequently asked question, right? So in the view level or external level, it is the highest level of abstraction that describes only some part of the entire database. I won't get entire database, I am just getting a piece of database. So it will give the only part of a entire database. So it is also contains the method of deriving the objects in the external view from the objects of the conceptual view. So that is you can see here. In the external schema, by having some of the objects, I have accessibility to access the objects from this conceptual schema. So when it comes to the conceptual schema, here I have some objects. With that object, I can access the content of this internal schema. So this will be in this way. So I can access the content of internal schema by conceptual schema and content of conceptual schema by external schema. And also it will be called as highest level of abstraction. This is regarding what? Data abstraction, and it is also important question. We'll see about the next topic, that is DBMS user. So now we prepared a database, I have a processing cycle, then who is going to use all those things? I must have some users, right? So with a human intervention only, we can achieve some progress in the software. As we all know that database is a software, it needs to be accessed by some people. So then who are all the database management users? We'll see now, and should not neglect this topic also. They can ask you to mention the DBMS user for 3 marks or 2 marks question, or sometimes can be asked for 5 marks to explain the database management user. Who is the first user then? That is end user. End user or a database user, one who is getting a benefit out of it. For example, if I am fetching some data and information over the internet with the help of some database, then I will be considered as an end user or a database user. So database users are those who interact with the database in order to query and update the database and generate the reports. So database user or a end user, what they are going to do? They have an ability, or they are going to interact with the database in order to query. That means I can question, I can update, I can delete, I can generate some reports. So then that kind of my users will be considered as what? End user or a database user. Next we have a system analyst. So why this analysis is important? So they have to analyze, right? What they have to analyze? So this determines the requirements of end user. They have to think about the end user. For example, if you are owning any of the shops, you have to think about what is the requirement of your customer. For example, if you are running a jewelry shop, you have to think about what kind of pattern I am supposed to bring, either in the gold or diamonds or in silver. So you need to think about the customer's requirement, then only you can be in the market. So here also system analyst will going to determine the requirements of a end user in order to create a solution for their business need and also focus on the non-technical and technical aspects. They will also consider and also they will think about the technical and non-technical. For example, if they are considering about the database, how the data can be fetched and what speed. So they have to think about the memory space that is related to either technical as well as the non-technical issues or aspects. So that is what the duty of the system analyst. So next we have a application programmers. What about this application programmer? So these are the computer professionals who implement the specification which is given by the system analyst and develop the application programmers. Application programs. So this application programmers are the peoples or they are the computer professionals, one who are there to generate a programs and they are going to get the analysis from the system analyst. So I am getting the data from system analyst as a application programmer. So if I get to know what is the requirement of a user, then I can bring that requirement to be get satisfied with the programming or with the software. Then that will going to be done by with the help of this application programmer. And also we have a database administrator. So without any controls or without any security, can we run the database? There must be some people who is going to administrate or who is going to take care about all these other people. So that means DBA in short, database administrator, is a person who has central control over both data and applications. So there must be a control over the data and application. Who is going to take care about all those controlling? That is by database administrator. In short, it will be considered as a DBA. So some of the responsibilities of DBAs are what? They have to authorization access. That means they should not allow the people one who is not authorized. That means if they are unauthorized, if they are trying to hack the database, this DBA should not allow them to do all those things. So they are going to give the authority to have a authorization access. And schema definition, how the table must be, how the database must be, how the database management must be. Every conceptual things or every schema will going to be designed by the DBA. And also modifications. I don't want this table. I just wanted to remove the employee table. I just wanted to remove the content of this employee. So that modification, that authority is there only for the database administrator. And also new software installation and security enforcement and data administrator. Along with that, he has a ability or a capability to install the new software system which is required for the database, and also they have to think about the security, as we already told that authorization access. Only authorized person has to access the data and information and related to administrator. Okay, these are the operations which will going to be performed by the database management administrator. And we have a database designer. So now we have owner of a house, those who have given the blueprint of that house. Now what we want? We want builders. So that is what? Designers. So we wanted to get a blueprint, how it will going to be look like once it is built. For that reason, we wanted to have a designer. So database designers are responsible for identifying the data to be stored in the database, for choosing structures to represent and to store the data. So this design work is what? They are responsible for identifying the data which needs to be stored in the database. Whether I wanted to store the data of an employee, yes or no. Then if I wanted to store the data of a student, yes or no. So then that will going to be analyzed and that will going to be designed by the database designer. And also he is going to choose the structure in order to represent or in order to store the data. This is related to DBMS user. We'll see the last topic of today's session, that is related to data independence. What is this independence? August 15th we are all celebrating. That occasion is considered as a data independence. Whatever the data that we got on the 15th August will be considered as a data independence? No, right? Then what is this data independence? We have several levels in the database. We have several tables. So if I am doing some changes from my first floor, that should not affect on the second floor. So that is what data independence. If I am doing some modification to one data, that should not reflect or that should not harm the content of another data. So the data must be independent to each other. So the capacity to change the data at one layer, that should not affect the data at another layer. That will be considered as what? Data independence. So as I told, if I am doing some infrastructure things in the first floor, that should not affect the second floor. If you are doing any infrastructure works in the second floor, that should not harm the content of first floor. That is what there must be data independence. When it comes to the database or data independence, at that time the data which is in the one layer should not affect the content of another layer. And also here we have two types of data independence, which includes physical data independence and logical data independence. I hope you all understood. In my next session, I will be continuing with the physical data independence as well as the logical data independence. Let me meet you all in the next session. Until that, you all need to keep learning, keep on growing. Thank you.